It's, as I said, the common ground where we already see consensus amongst regulators and legislators in terms of handling AI responsibly. This first one is often, I would say, underrated. It's not a super sexy kind of piece of governance in many respects, but it's an essential foundation for enterprises understanding what AI they're using, where and how are they deploying it. Creating an inventory or registry of AI systems is actually a critical aspect of managing the risks associated. And it's something that we see in almost every requirement across the board. AI system tests human oversight, enabling what that looks like. There are so many different approaches to human oversight: human in the loop, human over the loop, human out of the loop. But either way, you have to enable the ability for humans to have some review of AI systems and be able to predict risks and put in place a risk mitigation plan. It's not really about if something goes wrong, but when something goes wrong, what is the plan in place to address that? Independent evaluation, algorithmic impact assessments, we already talked about that in reference to Colorado's law as well, but being able to describe the model that was used, the training data used, what is the model expected to be used for, expected and unexpected outcomes. These are all things that can be included in something like an algorithmic impact assessment. We don't have to prescribe all the elements of these, but it's important that something like this is done, that there's precedent for this in other sectors, and real reason to believe that it has an impact on increasing transparency and accountability for AI systems. So that's it for me today, and I look forward to the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. At this point, I think we have an opportunity for some questions from the audience. If anybody would like to come up to one of the microphones and ask a question. Really none. That's interesting. Here comes a question.
Can't let a silence go unfilled. Are there any best practices? I know often, like the Better Business Bureau has certain business practices any member must adhere to. Are there any standards or ethical codes of conduct for people developing AI systems? These are all things nice to be aspired to. Is there anything keeping them on record to help them help comply?
Yeah, is this on?
Yep, it's on.
Great question. I think standards are the new black, if you will. I think they're getting really important, particularly in this space. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're
Okay, great. I was just saying standards are critical to this. So on an international level, ISO has developed a standard called 42001, which is an AI enterprise risk management standard. We've seen a lot of adoption of this amongst our enterprises and companies that we're working with, because it's something they can point to say definitively they have put in place a risk management system that matches or adheres to an internationally agreed upon standard. There are many different work streams in this area. There's the IEEE 7000 series. There's ongoing work in Sensenelec, particularly for the EU AI Act on the harmonized list of standards that are real definitive lines in the sand that you can point to for what good looks like.
Next.
Thank you so much for your presentation. My question is, I deal in equity and policy, and so could you speak to equity in AI and how we can either teach AI what it needs to learn in that space, or just speaking to what is there already?
Absolutely. I think there are so many groups that do a fantastic job on this and can speak to it much better than I can. I'll talk about the enterprise perspective, but just from the beginning, I want to talk about groups like Data and Society that have done incredible work in this regard, particularly looking at what transparency looks like to the end user and what that looks like depending on how you identify. I want to point out that there's no one impact assessment to rule them all. There are always going to be regional, geographic, cultural specificities that have an impact on the transparency that you're giving. But to answer in broader terms, one thing that we always emphasize at an enterprise is that it's important to involve everyone in your AI governance. You need to make sure that everyone at the enterprise knows how you're using AI and what the rules are for using it and how to report or flag or be more transparent about potential harms that may have occurred. So ensuring that there's a transparent process for notifying of these harms is a critical piece, I think, in ensuring equity in AI, but also that this isn't something that's managed by one person or or one team, but it includes multiple teams, the legal team, the compliance team, the data science team, people who are using it in end products, engineers. It's really critical to have everyone represented at the table.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, Michael Akiwumi, Civic Science Fellow at Rutgers University, New Jersey. Thanks for the informative presentation. Really appreciate it. So I have two quick questions. One, based on the research you're seeing, or the work you're doing at the state level, do you see any trend emerging when it comes to AI challenges or concerns that state lawmakers should pay attention to at the state level? The second question is, there was a slide where you talk about high-risk AI systems, which is coming from the EU approach to AI regulation, which is risk-based. So do you have any recommendations or thoughts on choosing between rights-based approach to AI regulation versus risk-based approach to AI regulation? Thank you.
Great question. I think on the first, in terms of trends that are related to AI concerns, we've definitely seen a lot on generative AI, in particular this concept of systemic risk posed to society. So the more large and powerful the model, what are the unknown unknowns that need to be addressed either pre or post deployment of those models. Also, deep fakes and election misinformation is pretty common area of concern and a harm, I would say, especially at the state level in the United States. To your second question, I think that it's hard to say which is better because this is such a preeminent area of technology and new and nascent ways in which to put guardrails and regulations on it. I think that there are more commonalities between the European Union's approach and the US approach as articulated in the US executive order and the OMB guidance than one might initially assume. So while there is the risk-based approach for the European Union, and it's a human rights impacting or safety impacting categorization in the US executive order, you can see that the sectoral concerns are the same. So insurance, financial services, critical infrastructure, and because AI is so contextual and use case specific, I think approaching it in that way from a contextual use case kind of angle is probably the best method at this point.
Thank you. We're kind of coming up on time. I see two more people with questions, so we'll go through those and we probably need to wrap it up.
Thank you. Good morning. Sarah Mercer from a lawyer lobbyist at Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck. AI does not exist in a vacuum. There are many states that have passed data privacy laws. Senator Rodriguez is a legislator who's passed one of those. We've also seen state attorneys general, including A.G. Campbell from Massachusetts, issue advisories saying that they don't need any additional laws to regulate or do kind of their work in the consumer protection space, in the discrimination space. How should state lawmakers consider sort of that web of existing law when they're thinking about crafting and making policy specific to AI, if at all?
Great question. We often talk about this, what are the unique risks associated with AI and why can they not be addressed by existing privacy guardrails or existing cybersecurity risk management processes. So it's important to note that there are things that happen with AI models that don't happen in a privacy or cybersecurity context. So when one model interacts with another model, the risks are compounded in a myriad of ways that can't really be handled by data governance policies that are examining data as a very static concept. So being a good steward of the data isn't really going to address things like model drift or confabulations or compounded risks between different model interactions. So for this reason, I think it's important to consider the unique risks associated with AI, but as you correctly noted, is absolutely an integrated part of existing data privacy, data governance. AI governance cannot be achieved without robust data privacy management and data governance, and similarly, robust cybersecurity risk management. So while they interact and coexist together, it's also important to talk about what are the unique risks associated with AI that need to be handled with AI governance.
Sir.
Appreciate your comments today. John Hayes, State Senator, Oklahoma. You know, obviously artificial intelligence, AI, is a hot topic. Look at the crowd. But as you look at AI, you know, you have artificial intelligence and you have augmented intelligence. How do you see that? How do you see that playing out? I mean, I have a preference one over the other, but I'm just curious from your standpoint, as we're going down this path, how do you see that playing out?
Good question. Complicated question. I think that at Credo AI, our focus is very much AI being in service of humanity. So augmenting existing abilities is really an important part of this. How can AI enable people to do what they're doing in a more efficient way, in a safer way? So I don't really have an answer to you on where it's going or what will happen, but I think it's really important that we have guardrails now to ensure that we are in charge of making that decision.
All right, last question.
Good morning. Thank you for your presentation. Denise Roberts, Maryland State Delegate. My question is surrounding jobs when it comes to AI. I know there's a conversation or debate back and forth about whether or not a lot of people are going to a lot of people are going to be losing jobs, and AI can be replacing jobs. And it could also mean that people are going to have to retool, reskill. How is this an urgent situation, and also how can we as legislators address and or approach that part of it? Thank you.
Thanks for that question. I think it's a little bit outside my wheelhouse in particular, but I would agree with you that it's an urgent question, one that legislators should absolutely be looking at. As I said previously, I think we have to think about what are the efficiency gains that we can realize at the enterprise level, but also what does that mean for people who either are adopting AI or cannot adopt or cannot retrain or reskill. So I would say hard for me to say what the answer is there, but a critical question for sure.
All right, well, we are at time. I hope you all enjoyed AI 101. Obviously, you see the room's packed. There is a track, so there'll be a lot of other presentations, but I hope you all walk away with something, and thank you all for being here. Thank you for your presentation.